Welcome to PBCJ's coverage of the sitting of the Senate. I am Simone Absalom Gale, and I'll provide a brief outline of what's expected to take place during the sitting. But before we begin, did you know that the President of the Senate is Thomas Tavares Finson of the ruling Jamaica Labour Party? He has been President of the Senate since March 2016. He is an attorney at law. According to his Instagram page, yes, his Instagram page, at Tom Tavares Finson, he is a criminal lawyer, Queen's Counsel, and chairman of the National Gallery of Jamaica. On the agenda for this session, the Bank of Jamaica Amendment Act 2022 will be taken. According to a statement on the Central Bank's website, the BOJ Amendment Act is a response to the Jamaican experience. The primary objective of the central bank will now be the maintenance of price stability expressed as an achievement of the inflation target. This clarity will help anchor inflation expectations to guide decision-making across businesses and households. The government will set the inflation target expressed as a range to be consistent with the government's growth and employment objectives. However, the BOJ Amendment Bill empowers the BOJ to grant it the operational independence to achieve this target without external influence. Once a new target is set, the BOJ is expected to achieve it over the medium term, defined as not less than 36 months. According to Finance Minister Dr. Nigel Clark, the bill is historic because a credible institution is now legally tasked and empowered with the objective of preserving low and stable inflation within an accountable, transparent, and robust governance framework. End quote. And that's what's on the agenda. It should be noted that elements of the day's agenda can be changed or moved. But before we go, here are a few things you should bear in mind if you plan to attend a session of the Senate. No visitor shall create any act of disorder within the precincts of the House. No visitor shall be admitted to the House without first obtaining an admission card. Visitors who remain within the precincts of the House during a suspension of the session are asked to keep silent. No photography, videography, or sketching of the proceedings is allowed, unless so authorized by the presiding officer. And there should be no smoking inside the parliamentary building.
Friday, June the 3rd, 2022 is called to order. Before we begin the business of the day, I take the opportunity to welcome to the Senate this morning the High Commissioner for Canada to Jamaica, Her Excellency Emina Todd-Kovic. Members, the High Commissioner paid a visit to us this morning, and she is really interested in the mechanics, the politics, the government of this country, and generally being a student of political science. So she's with us today, paying a courtesy call on all of us, but also observing the meeting of the Senate. And we have invited her to sit in the President's area. The High Commissioner is coming from the country of Turkey, recently renamed, and she has a strong interest in the continued strengthening of relations between Jamaica and Canada. And of course, is particularly interested generally in gender issues. And we also have a number of personnel from the Ministry of Finance, the Public Service, the Bank of Jamaica, who are attending the sitting today. And we recognize Ms. Natalie Haynes, Deputy Governor of the Bank of Jamaica. It's always a pleasure to see you in the Parliament. Ms. Avlana Johnson, Deputy General Counsel. Nice to see you. and Mr. Mario Griffiths, Director and Technical Leader of the Cbdc. Is that correct? Yes, so welcome to you all. And the Chief Parliamentary Counsel, Ms. Grant. Okay, excellent, fantastic. Colleagues, before we begin the business of the day, I bring to your attention the passing of a former member of the Senate, and we ask that you all remember the service of Senator Herbert Arthur Zaidi, OD. Mr. Zaidi served in the Senate from 1983 to 89, and outside of the Parliament served the public sector as chairman of the Urban Development Commission, and he was also involved in a number of other companies, including T. Geddes Grant, Denon Geddes, and the National Continental Corporation. Many will remember Senator Zaidi, or Turo as he was fondly called, for his interest as a sportsman. He was a prolific golfer and served for many years as president of the Jamaica Golf Association. In fact, I am informed, because I was not aware, that the national recognition which he received in 2018 was for his contribution to sport, and in particular golf. Of course, that national recognition could easily have come from his contribution to the Senate and to the development of business generally in Jamaica. He is remembered by me as an affable person committed to promoting equality and justice. We appreciate his service to Jamaica and express our deepest condolences to his family. May I ask you to stand in the usual manner? May his soul rest in peace and light perpetual shine upon him. I would ask the clerk to kindly prepare the necessary notation and indicate to his wife and children that this Honourable Senate recognized his contribution to the Senate and the country on this day, June 3, 2022. Statements by ministers. Announcements.
Laid on the table of the Senate today are the following: Ministry Paper number 36 of 2022, an annual report of the Planning Institute of Jamaica for the year ended December 2020. Ministry Paper number 37 and 38 of 2022, and annual reports of the Tax Administration, Jamaica, for the financial years 2014, 2015, 2016, and 2016-2017. The National Strategy to Develop Jamaica's Global Digital Services Sector, 2021 to 2025. Annual report on audited financial statements of the Jamaica Social Investment Fund for the year 2020-2021. Annual performance report of the Ministry of Local Government and Rural Development 2021-2022. The Jamaica Constabulary Force, the Commissioner's Report for January 2021 to April 2022. Citizens Security Handbook, Advancing Citizen Security, Building Resilience, Foundations for Sustainable Development from the Ministry of National Security, and a slate of security accomplishments 2021-2022 from the Ministry of National Security.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Bills brought from the Honourable House of Representatives.
The following is a message from the Speaker of the House of Representatives. To the Honourable Senate, I have the honour to advise the Honourable Senate that on the 24th day of May 2022, a bill entitled An Act to Amend the Bank of Jamaica Act was passed in the House of Representatives. Signed, Marisa Dalrymple Philibert, CD, MP, Speaker of the House of Representatives.
Mr. President, I signify my willingness to take charge of the bill.
Thank you, Minister.
A bill shortly entitled The Bank of Jamaica Amendment Act 2022, read a first time.
Mr. President, I beg to give notice of, or rather, I beg to request further reading of the bill, second reading of the bill, and ask or indicate that at a later stage today I will ask for suspension of the standing orders in order to take the bill through all its stages. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam. Petitions, papers, reports from committees, notices of motions given orally, questions and answers to questions, motions that may be made at the commencement of public business requiring notice, motions relating to the sitting of the Senate, motions for leave to introduce bills, presentation of bills without the leave of the Senate first obtained, public business. Madam?
Mr. President, I move for suspension of the standing orders in order to allow me to take second reading of the bill and to take the bill through its concluding stages. Thank you.
Members would have heard the question. Those in favor? Against? Minister?
Thank you, Mr. President, and allow me to start, of course, by joining you in expressing condolences to the family of former Senator Zaidi, and join in your expression that sympathies be conveyed to his widow and to his surviving family. Indeed, for their comfort, I know he is remembered as a man larger than life, and that must make sure that their loss is felt more deeply each day. So we pray for their comfort, Mr. President, and thank you for having brought the matter to the attention of this Senate. Mr. President, I also rise to open the debate on the Bank of Jamaica Amendment Act 2022 to facilitate the national issuance of a central bank digital currency, CBDC, and to empower the Bank of Jamaica as the sole authority to issue the central bank digital currency as legal tender. Mr. President, as the digital revolution continues to cement technology as the cornerstone of the world's daily activities, it is important that governments, businesses, and people indeed adapt to this new reality. Digital interaction, digital engagement is in fact becoming the cornerstone of economic growth. And according to World Bank Study 2016, it accounted for 17% of GDP growth in developing countries. In fact, our medium-term socioeconomic framework prioritizes inclusive, sustainable growth, Mr. President, in recognition that as a government, we are working hard to ensure that no one is left behind and that our growth is indeed meaningful for the average Jamaican. It is sustained and sustainable. So while the government's management of the economy has created confidence, it has lowered transactional and political risks to business, we are also committed to making greater strides in innovation and use of technology. The government of Jamaica is determined to make sure that the benefits to Jamaicans of this digital revolution are fully maximized. We have examined and continue to examine factors that will enable us to benefit and the challenges with which we must treat. So in this nexus between technology, the economy, and finance, access to technology is already encouraging. There were 3.1 million mobile connections in Jamaica in January 2021. That's the equivalent of 104.3% of the total population. Many people have more than one mobile connection. So the next step must be for us to leverage these connections to increase financial inclusion. The IDB has said that Jamaica's recent improvements in institutional capacity, policy discipline, and structural factors suggest that there's considerable scope to accelerate financial sector development and to broaden access and inclusion. That means that Jamaica is poised, well poised, to increase the proportion of persons, of individuals and firms that use financial services. And why is this important? Financial inclusion is critical for development and poverty reduction. In fact, access to financial services is considered to be among one of the most critical building blocks for achieving the 2030 Sustainable Development Goals. And related issues are included as targets for Goals 8 and 17 in particular. It is clear that all Jamaicans stand to benefit considerably from policies and technology that makes financial transactions easier, access to financial services easier. Similarly, for businesses, particularly micro, small, and medium enterprises, access to financial services is associated with more innovation, more growth, and job creation. So, Mr. President, financial inclusion depends to a large extent on owning a bank account. It has to this point. According to the World Bank, some of the main reasons given by Jamaicans for not having a bank account include not enough money. That is, they feel that you have to have more money in order to have a bank account, and maybe that's a minimum balance issue. They feel it's not accessible to them. They don't have the documentation required. As it relates to lack of documentation, the government is making strides to ensure that all Jamaicans are able to access and participate in the formal banking and other systems through the rollout of the National Identification System and other improvements. Identity and documentation will be much less of a challenge to Jamaicans, and this, when the NIDS is rolled out, together with amendments made to POCA in 2019, which is a framework that allows now for lower KYC accounts, they provide further examples of efforts being made to expand access to financial services for all Jamaicans as a foundation for their own personal and family growth and wealth creation, and also for the receipt of support and access to services in the case of the most vulnerable. And I want to make a call, and I do hope that within the finance sector that we will stop referring to lower KYC accounts and start referring to easy access accounts, because that's what they are, and that's how people would understand them better and indeed perceive them as more accessible, because KYC in banking sector, in banking circles, is very easy and common language, but it is not translating as well to the average Jamaican. If we are aiming for inclusion, we may need to change some of the language as well. So I'm hoping that that will be part of the development of communication around it and around encouraging persons to take up use. Mr. President, other traditional challenges, that is, other than minimum balances and documentation, will also be lessened by this companion model, that is, by the issuance of Cbdc, because no bank account will be required to use Cbdc. Fundamentally, no bank account required. What you now will have is a wallet. So you will get a Cbdc wallet issued by banks or authorized payment service providers with simpler customer-friendly processes, easy access. It's also anticipated that CBDC will lower the costs associated with providing a national means of payment and provide an alternative to the issuance of banknotes. So CBDC will allow businesses more efficient cash management, as it is instant and doesn't come with cash handling fees. And similarly, its facilitation, that is the model being used, ensures that both households and businesses, so individuals, households, will be able to use CBDC to make payments and to hold value. So central bank digital currency, as we define it, is digital money denominated in the national unit of account of a country, so dollars and cents for Jamaica, that is legal tender, acknowledged as legal tender, and a digital electronic payment instrument that is a direct liability of the central bank. This is a formal definition. It is not to be confused with cryptocurrency. Cryptocurrency, which we probably hear more about, you see more articles about it on the net and in the press, it is not to be confused with cryptocurrency, because those are privately issued. They're generally not backed by a central banking authority. They're therefore more volatile and a bit more uncertain than CBDC, which is quite a conservative approach into the digitization model, or models available. Mr. President, several countries are actively exploring CBDCs at one level or another across the world, and of immediate relevance to Jamaica in terms of considerations. We know that the Central Bank of the Bahamas has initiated the implementation of a CBDC in 2020. The People's Bank of China has initiated one in 2020 as well. And last year in 2021, the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank launched a CBDC called Dcash. So there's a sand dollar in Bahamas, and Dcash in the Eastern Caribbean, subsisting alongside our new Jamdex. The Bank of Jamaica concluded its pilot in conjunction with NCB, as has been shared publicly by the Minister already. They've successfully concluded a pilot of the CBDC last year, and it ran August to December. The next phase is the national rollout of the CBDC, which is scheduled for this quarter. And I'll therefore say that it is in this context that we're asking for members' approval of the bill before us, that is setting the legislative framework for the issuance of Jamdex. So the scheme of this bill is largely based around deleting and replacing references to quote-unquote notes and coins in the Bank of Jamaica Act with the words notes, coins, and central bank digital currency, with a view to expanding the reference, thereby empowering the Bank of Jamaica as the sole authority to issue CBDC and to recognize CBDC as legal tender. The bill also includes new provisions to address matters such as privacy and cybersecurity as related to this digital form of the country's fiat currency. More particularly, the bill mandates minimum cybersecurity standards for financial intermediaries. And it also provides for the protection of consumers and safeguards against opportunities that may be created for unlawful surveillance or monitoring of individual transactions. If I could just walk us briefly through the bill, Mr. President, Clause 2 provides the definition of central bank digital currency. It amends Section 2 of the Principal Act by inserting this new definition, which reads, central bank digital currency means a digital form of currency issued by the bank under Section 12(1) that is legal tender in electronic form in the island. Clauses 3 and 4 both expand the bill's references to notes and coins to include CBDC, as I've just explained. Clause 3 amends Section 5, which specifies the principal objects and functions of the bank. And Clause 4 amends Section 10, which provides for what is accepted as currency in Jamaica. Clause 5 provides for the amendment of Section 12, and Section 12(1) is that provision which gives the bank the sole right to issue notes and coins. So it is now proposed to amend it to ensure that the bank is the sole issuer of central bank digital currency. So Section 12.1 is being amended by deleting notes and coins, replacing it with notes, coins, and central bank digital currency. Section 12.2 is amended by deleting subsection 2 in its entirety and then substituting the following. No person other than the bank shall issue in Jamaica A, notes, coins, or central bank digital currency, or B, any document or tokens payable to bearer on demand having the appearance of or purporting to be or which are likely to pass as or be confused with notes, coins, or central bank digital currency issued by the bank. So this is preventing counterfeit or any other type of illicit activity. Mr. President, 12.3, which provides for the penalty in respect of the offense that is created for persons who may seek to issue notes and coins and now Cbdc other than the bank, that has been amended to change the penalty from 50,000, the fine rather, from 50,000 to $3 million. Okay, it has also been amended to change the period of imprisonment from 2 years to 3 years, and this has been by amending paragraph C. Mr. President, Clause 6 amends Section 14, which addresses denominations and forms of notes and coins. The amendment seeks to expand Section 14, again, to include Cbdc in subsection 1A by the same deletion and replacement, notes and coins for notes, coins, and central bank digital currency. Clause 7 provides for the amendment of Section 15 of the Act, which addresses notes and coins issued by the bank as being legal tender. So Section 15.1 is amended by deleting the word "and" at the end of paragraph A and inserting the word "and" at the end of paragraph B and inserting a new paragraph C, which states, if made in central bank digital currency, shall be legal tender for the payment of any amount. Clause 8 amends Section 19, which provides for the functions of the bank in relation to currency, which includes the printing, minting, printing of notes, minting of coins, issue, reissue, redemption of notes and coins, safe custody of unissued notes and coins, and the safe custody and destruction of plates and paper for the printing of notes and dies for the minting of coins. So the functions outlined on this section, again, are being expanded to include the minting and storage of Cbdc. Mr. President, Clause 9 amends Section 21, which requires that the bank holds assets of a sufficient amount to cover the total amount of notes and coins in circulation. So this provision is also being expanded to have this requirement for assets in reserve to also apply to Cbdc. Mr. President, Clause 10 amends Section 45 of the Act, which deals with the power to make rules and guidelines. It's necessary to amend Section 45 to give the bank the power to develop guidelines for minimum cybersecurity standards for financial intermediaries to adhere to, as well as rules that govern the interaction between financial intermediaries and customers in the use of Cbdc. So Section 45 is amended in the marginal note. So you see we've included reference to rules, and in 45, the section is renumbered as 45.1, and then an inserted new subsection 2 reads, without prejudice to the generality of subsection 1, the bank may, with the approval of the minister, make rules to govern A, minimum cybersecurity standards for financial intermediaries, and B, the interaction between intermediaries and customers in the use of central bank digital currency. Clause 11 provides, and these are underway. In fact, I believe one set is completed already, and the other set is being reviewed. So we are well on our way in that regard. Mr. President, Clause 11 provides for the insertion of a new Section 45B in the Act, and this gives the bank the power to make regulations with the approval of the Minister of Finance, and it sets out the areas in which regulations may be made, and indeed, it is not intended, as far as I'm aware, to issue regulations now for the implementation, as it is felt that the bank which has a robust monitoring mechanism, as we are all aware, will monitor the CBDC in the same way that it now monitors the movement of cash. Mr. President, I shouldn't say the movement of, that it regulates cash and the issuance of cash. Mr. President, there is a consequential amendment which is provided for in Section 50, in Clause 12, and it provides for the amendment of Section 55 of the Proceeds of Crime Act. Section 55 is the section which enables authorities to recover in civil proceedings property, including cash, which was unlawfully obtained. Accordingly, the amendment seeks to expand the definition of cash to include CBDC so that it may, of course, recover CBDC, which was illegally or unlawfully obtained. So, Mr. President, it includes in the list of elements of the definition of cash, next after paragraph A, as a new paragraph B, central bank digital currency as defined in Section 2 of the Bank of Jamaica Act. Mr. President, again, I indicate that the pilot run by the Bank of Jamaica in 2021 was successful. It indeed highlighted that there's great interest in the CBDC, and the next phase is now the national rollout. The passage of these amendments will set the framework for us to proceed in that regard. I therefore ask for members' contribution to their debate and ultimately their support for the bill before us. I thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, Minister. Senator Bunting.
Thank you, Mr. President. Let me start with a slight amendment to how the Leader of Government Business in the Senate opened her contribution, or opened the debate, where she described this bill as operating at the intersection of technology, finance, and the economy, I think you said. And I agree with you, but I would expand it to include national security. And I do that in the context of the Minister of National Security saying in his sectoral debate presentation just this week that each year $1 billion of illicit proceeds from scamming, drug dealing, money laundering is used to fuel the illicit economy and criminal organizations. And my familiarity with the sector also tells me that included in this is the use of cryptocurrencies. And we have therefore to be very careful that nothing in this bill facilitates the ease or expansion of those criminal enterprises in evading the scrutiny of law enforcement agencies, agencies such as MOCA and FID. Just perhaps a week or two earlier, we also learned about a commercial bank that disclosed, I think, 18 million in fraud, in cyber fraud of some type that occurred within a few days over 10 or 20 of their customers. And it really brings home to us that as we proceed in this direction, which we must, but we must proceed with caution and care so that we don't end up inadvertently making it easier for criminals and their facilitators to access the illicit proceeds of crime. So, Mr. President, the opposition supports this bill and the issuance of the central bank digital currency. I believe it has the potential, and in a sense, this is the converse of making it easier for illicit proceeds. I think the converse is it can take a lot of risk out of businesses, legitimate businesses that currently handle a lot of cash. We've seen in recent times in rural areas where even the Prime Minister seems to have been surprised to learn that gangs were operating with abandon in St. Elizabeth, for example, that these gangs tend to target retail and wholesale outlets, gas stations, cash stores, businesses that handle a lot of physical cash. And to the extent that we can move a lot of that into the digital currency realm, into digital wallets, or any other type of electronic-based transactions rather than cash, I think that will be a positive in reducing the risk of harm and violent or exposure to violence by legitimate business operators. So we support the introduction of the currency, of the central bank digital currency. And I want to make a clear distinction between this and some of the cryptocurrencies that are out there. And Mr. President, you may recall that I'm a bit of a skeptic when it comes to things like Bitcoin, because I've always felt, probably because of my background in national security, that it has no intrinsic value other than to criminal organizations, money launderers, etc. But otherwise, I don't see the intrinsic value in most of these cryptocurrencies, which is quite distinct from a central bank digital currency. And I think we need to go now to look at two areas. I just want to turn to two areas where I think the opposition has some concerns. The first is about the security of the central bank digital currency and the BOJ's capacity to provide these security assurances, given that Clause 10 of the bill only makes reference to BOJ providing the minimum cybersecurity standards. And Clause 12 of the bill, which has the implication that central bank digital currency transactions in excess of the allowed amount under the Proceeds of Crime Act will now be legal, since the definition of cash in Section 101 of the Proceeds of Crime Act has not been amended to include central bank digital currency. Now, I understand that this is deliberate, and it really now actually requires a bit of a departure into the technical areas, which I think most of us are not experts, and particularly those of us who are over 35 may not be as familiar with the digital currency. Fortunately, we have a few young people like my colleague, Senator Scott Motley, who can help me along. But the differences between the types of central bank digital currency and the technology that supports it would not be clear to the average person. I've done some research. I read in an article, I learned of the identity of the technology provider to the central bank, and I went on their website and I did some reading on the subject. And what is interesting, because some of the digital currencies that have already been introduced use the blockchain type technology. So it's you either have a centralized ledger or a distributed ledger, as is used in many of the cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin. The e-currency company that supports the central bank's issuance, they take a different approach. They take what's called a value-based approach to the central bank digital currency. So rather than the account or ledger-based approaches envisioned in distributed ledger technology and central bank account-based designs, this value-based system is sometimes referred to as an object-based system. This digital secure currency is composed of layers of cryptography that form a digital object that is secured independent of a digital wallet. So this e-currency digital secure currency approach most closely mimics cash. Cash is a bearer instrument, and therefore the bearer of the instrument holds the value, whoever the bearer may be. So if you take $10 from your wallet and give it to someone else, it has the same $10 value. In the account or ledger-based system, the account owner must prove their identity in order to access the value in the system. The system, in other words, authenticates the user, whereas in our system, it authenticates the value. So it's really an object-based system. So the difference between this and the ledger system is that the currency object can exist without the identity of the holder or transaction participants. This is an advantage from a number of perspectives. It doesn't use the amount of energy, for example, that the distributed ledger systems use in verifying transactions. It's actually a technology design that also provides for more privacy for the user, that the government or the central bank would not have the details of the transaction. It would not know whether you bought bananas, for example, Senator Gale, at the market this morning, because they would not have any central access to your digital wallet. So it provides for some privacy. So the flip side of that is that it relies on the wallet providers. In our case, as far as I can tell, it's commercial banks in the first instance. But I would hope that that would be eventually expanded to include all regulated entities such as credit unions or FSC licensees, etc. But the decoupling of the private sector participants, including whether commercial banks or other digital wallet providers, puts the burden on them to manage the anti-money laundering and the counter financing of terrorism responsibilities. It puts it squarely with these private providers, and therefore we must ensure that the rules and the regulations don't follow by any serious time the introduction, the general introduction outside of the pilot, the general introduction of this. Because if there are loopholes, it can be quickly exploited, particularly by these same people who are now finding ways to launder $1 billion per year, US dollars, in illicit proceeds. And you know, sometimes we say $1 billion, because it's in US dollars, it may not sound that big. It's 155 billion Jamaican dollars. That, by comparison, is about twice the entire budget of the Ministry of National Security and all its departments and agencies. So it tells you the challenges if the criminal organizations are financed at twice the rate of the law enforcement organizations, it tells you the challenges that we have. And therefore, the importance of co-opting the private sector participants as part of your monitoring and reporting and identifying of suspicious transactions within the economy. We currently operate in a technologically vulnerable environment where still a high level of public mistrust. There is still a high level of public mistrust in terms of transacting online. The opposition, therefore, doesn't believe that the only assurance that we have that the cybersecurity standards will be met by financial intermediaries should be the Minister of Finance's statement in the debate in the House. But that we think that the BOJ needs to very quickly publish the rules that will govern the financial intermediaries and all the regulations that will establish the various standards for cybersecurity, reporting, etc. The BOJ, I assume, is also going to build its capacity, because I recall when we had the initial requirements for suspicious transactions to be reported to the FID from the commercial banks, the FID was quickly overwhelmed by the volume of reports and realized that at the time they were set up to process or peruse these manually, and it was impossible. So I'm assuming that the BOJ is going to have adequate resources, whether technological, human, etc., to be able to monitor the reports of suspicious transactions, which I assume will now extend to the digital currency realm, and that it has been contemplated in what appeared to have been a fairly robust tender process when the technology was sought. And I do want to say here, I want to commend the Bank of Jamaica. I want to commend Deputy Governor Haynes and her team who was anchored this process, because clearly they have approached it very systematically and methodically. And I wouldn't want anything that I say here to seem to be taking away from that approach. But as with the introduction of any new technologies, there are always some unanticipated consequences. One of the I don't know if it's a pet peeve, but one of the things I tend to look at in the legislation, and it is in this bill also, but you will recall, Mr. President, when we looked at the last bill that dealt with a lot of electronic transfers, it had to do with the trusts, the trust legislation. I pointed out then that it was still using terminology that I think more applied to the paper-based era. So in fact, it spoke about endorsement of checks, or endorsement of bearer instruments, which in the electronic transfer era, we should have used a word more like approved rather than endorsed, because endorsed still seemed to be speaking to, the physical paper-based era. And so when I look at Clause 8 of the bill, which is amending Section 19 of the Principal Act, it is inserting some new paragraphs or sub-clauses. So 8 is going to introduce a new Section 19D, which is arranged for the minting and storage of central bank digital currency. Now, I know minting originally is a terminology that referred to coins because they were literally minted in a metallurgical process or stamped, by physical machines. And then we move down to F, which speaks about central bank digital currency plates. Now, currency plates are something when I came up in banking anyway, that was used for paper money. You use currency plates. And there are many movies that were made of counterfeiters coming up with these currency plates that were so good that they could, back in the day, you could hardly tell the difference between the currency that came from the counterfeit currency that came from these illicit plates versus the official plates. Now, when I've previously heard talk of cryptocurrency, they speak about mining Bitcoin, for example. And minting is something I associate with the actual physical coins. And if we're using a sort of parallel definition of minting and a parallel definition of digital currency plates to apply to central bank digital currency, I think we need to have some definitional explanations. Because I think it's quite a leap to go from physical, the terminology that applies to physical, to go to digital without more. And since we don't attempt to define these terms in the bill, then it may only be left to the public education or the rules and regulations that will subsequently be issued to address these issues. But as I said, just reading them, plain English, as somebody who's coming from a banking background, this minting was definitely something that referred to the production of coins, of the coins by the central bank or whatever the authority. And the currency plates were used in the production of the physical paper money. So, Mr. President, I conclude by recommending that the government, and perhaps more specifically the central bank, embarks on a robust public education campaign to sensitize the population about the safety and the benefits of the digital currency, as there is still some skepticism about the use of mobile wallets, and there is a lot of misunderstanding. Or just, I wouldn't even say misunderstanding, there is a vacuum of information for the average person. And I think we have to break it down and get the information out there as much as possible. And the final recommendation is that, notwithstanding the sensitive nature of the security protocols relating to the currencies, and it is something that I'm not, unaware of, so I understand the limitations. But in terms of really supporting the public education campaign, I think there should be a little more spoken, a little more information given around the technology that will be used for our central bank digital currency, so that public confidence in this transition will be increased. And finally, one more finally. Yeah, this is the third finally. The bearer instrument approach allows the central banks to meet both the visibility objectives without compromising the privacy objectives. Visibility in terms of telling them how the currency is moving, the velocity of movement of currency in the economy, etc., without telling them who is making the actual purchases. And I think that privacy objective is important, is very important. And I am happy that the technology that we're introducing achieves a balance between both. And as I said at the start of the presentation, the opposition supports this bill, notwithstanding the concerns that we've raised in terms of the implementation. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Bunting. Senator Gale.
Thank you, President. You know, having heard from the big banker, I am now just a consumer and also one who represents workers in the banking industry to understand and to interface a little about banking. And the financial industry is changing rapidly. And as a country, we must also move to facilitate this type of change, to remain efficient and to remain competitive in a market space. The commercial banks, they have been migrating their customers to utilize alternative channels of banking, alternative channels of transactions geared towards more efficiency. And so what this move is doing is that it's a benefit of greater financial inclusion for simpler access of transactions at all levels. And I want to utilize this opportunity to commend the central bank for this tremendous move in leading this initiative. Mr. President, you know, as it said, the CBDC, as it's called, is a digital form of central bank issued currency, and it's therefore a legal tender. And it's not to be confused with the cryptocurrency, which is a privately issued and not backed by the central authority. And so the CBDC is fully backed by the central bank as the sole issuer. And it's important, you know, to inspire the confidence in the use of this particular type of instrument, this particular type of digital transaction in the banking system. The CBDC, as it said, will not be a cost to consumers, and it will be a full complement to the banknotes or coins issued by the BOJ. Both the CBDC and the physical notes and coins will coexist in the payment space. So in addition to the use of coins and the formal currency, this is an added means of currency transaction. And so it must be reinforced that it's a legal tender, and the CBDC can be exchanged on a one-to-one basis with physical cash. And so households, businesses, individuals will be able to use the CBDC to make payments and to store value at no cost. And unlike cash, however, consumers will be able to make payments with the CBDC anywhere, at any time, or on any compatible device. And so there is an ease of the use of this currency. And so the bank has indicated that, the central bank has indicated that what they are using is some sort of a hybrid approach. between wholesale and the retail. It calls, though, for, and Senator Bunting, you made reference to it, for the private institutions, the commercial banks to come on board, those other registered financial institutions to come on board. Because what it does, it creates and inspires confidence in the system. And this new transactional measure requires some attendant of confidence and inspiration. You know, there are many persons that might not trust the system. It is a system that is calling for the wholesalers, the vendor on the street, the market vendors to utilize. But you have to be able to inspire them that there is a level of security with the use of this transaction from the purchaser to the recipient being the vendor. I have to know that, boy, I really get my money. It is intact. When it started out with online banking, you know, I know persons that migrated to online transaction. And when there was you're transferring funds, they still go into the bank to check if the money is there. Because the use of that passbook where the teller authorize it is inspiring the confidence. So when we are moving to this, the central bank has a fundamental and awesome responsibility to inspire confidence that the transaction go through and I get my money. And so this is part of the inspiration in terms of, you know, for the customer's needs. So in order to use the Cbdc, consumers will need to have a Cbdc account. And that will be different from the regular banking account. And it has been indicated that it is easier to get the Cbdc account rather than those array of measures that you have to utilize to get a regular banking account. And, you know, President, we must get to the stage where we simplify the setting up of bank accounts. Easier, in a simpler, a quicker format. And so it has been said that in order to carry out Cbdc transaction anywhere and anytime, the consumer will be able to access, download, and deploy a mobile wallet app on any smartphone, tablet, or similar compatible device using the network of both major telecom service providers. So it's going to be easier. Just download and deploy the app of the mobile wallet on your smartphone, your tablet, or any simple compatible device using the network of both telecom service providers. There are some benefits, and the benefits have been spoken about. You know, the sheer convenience from a broad and more modern payment system of a digital alternative to cash that is seamless, secure, and simple to use. Greater financial inclusion. You know, Senator Bunting, you spoke about the wholesale down the country and those shops, those bars, that a lot of cash transaction takes place, but they don't have the affordable mechanism to go employ those who move cash, right? They don't have that capability. They can't afford it. So this is a simpler and an easier way, a more secured way to conduct the financial transactions and not be able to store that hoard of cash. And that's important. For the financial system, it increases in the systematic efficiency and significant reductions on costs for cash distribution and storage, to which I spoke about. It also increases in the menu items of service available to customers and any opportunity to innovate unique products and systems. Now, for the central bank, there are some benefits. And it's just last week I had discussions with the central bank on another matter, unrelated in relation to the workers. But they spoke about the yes, and easier for them to pass the increase to the workers. But they spoke about the increased efficiency by removing the time and effort it takes to forecast currency needs and order new currency in advance. Yeah? So you now have this digital platform. So you can, it's an easier way of planning. There's also the significant long-term cost savings. There'll be no wear and tear on the digital currency. And it cannot be lost in circulation. So there'll never be a need for any replacement. And so in addition to that, there'll be no cost in increasing supply to the system as demand may increase over time. And that's one of the positives in terms of, the central bank. I asked Senator Bunting about the capacity building because, this new independent central bank has some awesome responsibilities. And this is one of those forefront measures being embarked on the bank. And I asked about the capacity building, having the internal skill sets to treat with these procedures and systems and the technological changes. And they have assured me that they have put measures in place to have the capacity. I like clause 11 of the bill that now inserts this new 45B. The A speaks to protecting consumers' daily financial activity. The security of it. Senator Bunting, when you spoke, you talk about me purchasing the half dozen banana. Right, banana. But I'm talking about you purchasing the 6 bottles of Heineken. The green bottle of Heineken. But you want to ensure that as part of you doing your transaction, there is no surveillance of any such transaction, right? There's the security to removing that fear. And so that is what 45B is doing. C, mandating minimum cybersecurity requirements for the recipient of central bank digital currency. Now, both yourself, Senator Bunting, and Senator Campbell Rodriguez and myself, we sit on the Joint Select Committee dealing with cybercrime. And we want to be satisfied there are measures put in place against any intent around those perpetrators that tend to utilize cyber scamming in this nature. And so there has to be that confidence in understanding that, there's no exposure. There is the protection. As we progress in this digital transformation, this digital change, calling on our society to use the alternative channel of, conducting digital online transaction, the education to users is essentially important. From the merchants to the users and all those who are going to be required to operate in the commercial space. And I ask in preparation of this, what a Heart Trust will be doing in terms of accommodating training in the digital space for users. And they have said to me that they are going to be conducting a digital literacy training. Areas of focus is banking, e-banking, e-wallets, Jamdex, how to utilize the government services from the TAJ, the Registrar General, how to get your passport. That is commendable. We need to get into the communities, get into those areas, those urban areas, those rural areas, and conduct educational training around the use of, just the use of the ABM machines. The use of these type of transaction that the man selling jerk chicken on Reddles Road corner here, that he is inspired, he has the confidence in using this methodology as an easier way of conducting business. And so I share the view. I agree in promoting this level of education to inspire confidence. And I'm hoping that at some point in time we can evaluate how many persons would have taken on this initiative, be it retailers, be it wholesalers, merchants, vendors, and users. And so I approve this amendment to the BOJ legislation. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Gill. Senator Floyd Morris. Senator Morris, just hold up one moment for me, please.
Microphone.
All right, go ahead.
Thank
you.
To turn on my microphone. Thank you. I do so at the prompting of Minister in her opening presentation. And I must say, Minister, good to see you, as per usual. Minister, when you spoke about financial inclusion, and it perked my ears, and I was not prepared to speak, but as you spoke, and in light of the fact that the representative from the Bank of Jamaica is here, and the Chief Parliamentary Counsel is here, I said that I have to make an intervention because I welcome and join with the leader of opposition business in supporting the legislation, because a digital economy is the way of the world. I was in Switzerland 3 months ago and was amazed at how digitized the economy and their society is. Wherever you go, you have to conduct transaction using some form, a digital format. And thankfully my wife was there to give me the support. But I want to turn locally, because as we make the transition, and when we talk about financial inclusion and digital inclusion, we have to make sure that we take into consideration all the stakeholders, because it is not just for one set of individuals that are going to be using these digital mechanisms. And I want to make an appeal, Madam Deputy Governor, well, Minister to the Deputy Governor of the Bank of Jamaica, that special provision be made for the banks to give due consideration for persons with disabilities. It is becoming more and more difficult for some persons with disabilities to use the banking system, because one of the things that is happening now is that a lot of ATM machines are being used right across the country. And what they are doing is that they are using touch screen technology. And they are replacing those ABM machines that would have the keypad. So it is being replaced with touchscreen. When you do that, you're placing persons who have a visual disability at a disadvantage, because we depend on the keypad to guide us. We know how the keypad is structured. And so we know that when you go across in the middle of the keypad, there's a little bump that is there on all the keypads that will indicate that is the 5, and you navigate your way from there. What we see happening now, it is becoming very difficult. I've gone to banks myself to open a new account, and they say to me that you have to insert your password. When they present the machine for me to insert the password, it is a touch screen. So I don't have no way, Senator Bunting, of knowing where the 1, the 2, or the 3, or the 4, or the 5, or the 6, or the 0 is. I have to get somebody now who I am confident of to help me in terms of getting the information inserted. And absolutely, that's a new level of risk. So I have to, in most time, I have to call my wife from work to come and assist in that regard. And I just can't imagine if it is so stressful for me, the ordinary person with a disability, out in the field, out in rural Jamaica, how difficult it is for that person to access and to establish those easy accounts that the minister spoke about. And there's a mechanism that can be utilized. All that needs to be done is that BOJ needs to say in its regulation to them, the banking community, for every 10 or probably every 5 ABM machine that the banks have, they have to have at least one that is fully accessible to persons with disabilities. So if you go, wherever you go, you know that you can see the access machines for persons with disabilities. I was doing a transaction the other day with a financial institution, and I'm not going to call the name of the financial institution, but I was very happy that the institution, when I conducted the transaction, it was so easy in terms of accommodating the shares. And what happened is that they engaged individuals with disability in the process of establishing the mechanism. When you include persons who with disabilities, Senator Gale, who live the experience and understand the thing, it makes life much easier. You can't get a non-disabled person to design a mechanism that you're going to call inclusive. You can't do it. It has to have persons with disabilities that have that practical hands-on experience to guide the process. And that is why we have our international mantra which says, nothing about us without us. Because we fundamentally believe that if we are going to be included and allowed to participate in the society, we have to participate in that which is going to impact on us on a day-to-day basis. And it takes me to the final observation that I want to make. Because I note that the bank of Jamaica is engaging in new currencies. Something that I personally question the validity of that in terms of spending billions of dollars on that now in light of where we are going with digital currency. I don't know if it is a good spend. But notwithstanding that, I wonder what is the extent of the consultation that has taken place with the disabled community, in particular those who are blind and visually impaired, to be able to identify and use the currency. You know, oftentimes, Senator Gill, people come to me and say, oh, you know, they say that something is on the currency that is supposed to make blind people able to feel the money. And somebody will take a currency and they'll say, see it there? I say, I can't see it. I must be able to feel it. And when I am trying to feel the lines that they say are there, as a blind person, I can't feel nothing. Why is that so? It's because when the currency was designed, somebody had a great idea, but there was no consultation with somebody who could say, yes, this would work. And so we end up with a currency. I will tell you that of all the currencies that we have, the most accessible and recognizable for a person who is blind and visually impaired is the $5,000. Because right in the middle of the $5,000, there's a distinguishing feature that is there that makes you know immediately that this is a $5,000. Right? I mean, it is a different texture. No. No. There's a different texture in the middle. If you feel it, if you have a 5,000, I'm going crypto now, so I don't have any. If I had a $5,000, I would demonstrate it to you inside here. But the fact of the matter is, that is the most accessible we have. I suggest there is a way that you can do that with the currency, because if you have a $100 note or a $1,000 note, you can. Oh, somebody has found a $5,000 for me to demonstrate, because right here in the middle, right here, there is this texture that is in the middle. So it feels different from this portion of the currency and this portion of the currency. So when I get this money, I just fold it here to identify and recognize that this is a $5,000 note. Right? So, yes. So it has, we have to understand that different disability have different peculiarities, right? I mean, a blind person operates via audio and via feeling. And so if it is that there's an insertion of some holes in the currency to do a distinguishing mark on each currency, dependent on the type of currency, then the blind person can easily well feel the holes dependent on which side that the note is, and you can identify the thing. But it's something that I'm prepared to have further discussion with the BOJ on. But just to say that the currencies that we have now are very inaccessible, and since you are going down that route, which is something I'm questioning also, the spend of the money in terms of movement towards a digital economy. I am suggesting that we make sure that the relevant consultations are done with the community of persons with disabilities. And bear in mind, please, that the Disabilities Act is in effect. And if I go to a bank and I feel that my rights are violated, Senator Gale, I have a duty, I have a legal recourse, because I can make sure that I lodge the complaint to the Jamaica Council for Persons with Disabilities for them to investigate the matter, and then I take the matter to the Disability Rights Tribunal, and then the banks or whosoever deprive me of my right to the service will end up in serious problems. And so we have to make sure that we correct all of these problems post-haste. May it please you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Morris. Senator Rodriguez Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. President. It is as though you are a fly on the wall in my home, because the running joke in my family is that we call ourselves Rodriguez. So I'm wondering now if you have a camera in my house, Mr. President. But thank you. I rise to support this bill wholeheartedly, because this relic I have in my hand here, I know Senator Bunting doesn't know it. It's a bank book. A bank book. You see, he didn't even know that. It's a bank book. And this bank book is still valid. I won't show the name of the bank. It's still valid. And I only opened this banking account last year. And this bank does not have any online facilities, but it serves a group. Well, let me call it. It's a PC bank. And let me tell you why I opened that bank book, this account. Because I'm not a farmer. I usually think it's PC bank, because PC banks are for farmers. My grandfather died and left me a house in deep rural Jamaica, in St. Mary. And I have a... I'm going to report you to MP Montague on that. Now, I have a tenant in the house, and the community has no bank, no ATM. Well, there's one now that rarely works, but it's far from where the house is. And in order for that tenant to pay me rent, we couldn't figure out how to do it, because there's no way I'm driving to St. Mary every time rent is due. And someone said to me, there's one PC bank in Stony Hill, and there's one in this town in St. Mary. So the tenant can deposit the money in the PC bank and I access it. No, I can only know if the tenant has deposited by going into the physical bank and they update the passbook. So I'm sharing this and to show you all that this is not a passport, it's actually a bank book, because this digital currency will help to solve issues like those. Because now the tenant will now be easily able to send me the rent in my wallet using Cbdc. And so I really support this. But on the other hand, I want us to ensure, and previous colleagues who spoke about this mentioned the importance of education. And sometimes when we think of education and communication strategies, we forget a group of people, the elderly, some of whom still miss having a bank book. So we have moved from bank books to online banking, and now we're moving into digital currency. But I don't believe banks have done enough to help the elderly to understand and feel comfortable within the space. And so I'm calling on the BOJ and anyone else and the banks to ensure that we have the elderly on board. It would be good to see us having fairs across the island, at churches, at school rooms, similar to how we have political meetings, where we have workshops for the elderly. It is important that it's not just on the radio or on the TV, but have them together among their peers, showing them physically how to use this thing and ensuring they understand the safety. Because one of the hardest things is for someone who has saved their entire life, they're in retirement now, age 70, 75, and they have a fear in their minds that they're going to lose all their money because they don't understand. Or they have a little thieving nephew who go and thief it off. We have to think in their minds, and we have to ensure there are security features in place so that the thieving nephew won't thief off the money of Miss Agatha's little savings that she has. Okay, or a niece, a thieving niece, for gender balance, Senator Sinclair. Now, I have lived in countries with mobile money, which is very similar to the CBDC. I think the main difference is that for the CBDC, the direct liability is with the BOJ, right? And I've found this digital currency to make life easier. There are those who laugh at me because nearly every week I go to Coronation Market. And I would love, and what happens to me in Coronation Market, when I wear something that doesn't have any pockets, I struggle in the market. I can't carry the big handbag. Hamper? No, the hamper too heavy. So I have nice bags, you see? And you can pay a man in the market now to carry your bags for you, so you're helping the economy as well. You see what I'm saying? So when I don't have a pocket, when I don't have pockets on my clothes, and quite a few clothes for us women don't have pockets, I struggle to carry the money in my hand because I need my hands. But if I know I'm paying using a digital currency, and I can say to my favorite broccoli vendor, what's your number? And I can just simply send the money from my phone, as I did when I lived in Rwanda, where you pay through your phone. So life is going to be so much easier for so many of us with this. So I wholeheartedly support it. Now, I have a few questions that I'm hoping can be answered. Will there be age group restrictions for the use of CBDC? I know in some countries there are age restrictions. So, Minister Johnson-Smith, I don't know if you have the answer here today, but will there be age restrictions? Another question, will the CBDC be an interest-bearing instrument in any form? I know there are a few countries that have done that as well, so I just want us to share that information here with Jamaicans, so anybody else who may have that question. And my third question, will there be limits on the use of CBDC units per day or per week or per month? I know that exists elsewhere. Will we have any of those limits as well? But I just want to say, the use of digital currency, it will facilitate retail payment like we can only imagine. It's fast, it's secure, and it makes life so much easier. So I support it. One last thing. The Cybercrimes Act that Senator Gale mentioned, we're reviewing the act right now. We're in that process. And it is good time, I think, for a conversation to be had. Because, for example, Section 10 of this bill we're discussing today, it says, without prejudice to the generality of subsection 1, the bank may, with the approval of the minister, make rules to govern the minimum cybersecurity standards for financial intermediaries. How will that feed into the Cybercrimes Act? I am positing that the Cybercrimes Act should not be silent as it relates to something like this. So it is important that the BOJ makes that contact with the committee now so that any possibilities can be discussed, because in the Cybercrimes Committee, we are not discussing that at the moment. And so it is important. And I notice also in Section 11, it talks about cybersecurity requirements. I think now is the right time because it needs to be joint up government, not BOJ over there doing one thing and cybercrime bill over here discussing other matters. Let us see where we can join them together and have one thing going. So again, wholeheartedly support this bill and look forward to the day when I go to Coronation Market and buy my broccoli and my oranges using digital currency, if it pleases you.
Minister? Senator, Minister Campbell, when it says you're not supposed to speak from a seat of your own, it also means communicating with other people, you know. Minister.
Thank you, Mr. President. I thank colleagues on both sides for their contributions to this debate. And indeed, it's again a demonstration of how it is that we really can come together when we recognize how to harness the positive efforts to help Jamaican citizens to advance Jamaica in its developmental goals, and of course to ensure that no one is left behind in this process. On the matter of noting, as it was phrased earlier, that this bill sits at the intersection of economy, finance, technology, and security. Indeed it does, Mr. President. And the fact of there being minimum standards doesn't mean that they are minimal standards. It just means that a standard is set so that no one who is authorized to issue Cbdc or to create the product of Cbdc for its customers, that they can do so with any other threshold assigned. It is that no lower threshold. They can do higher, they can't do less. So they can do more. And their own risk assessment frameworks will apply. So in the same way that, for example, Senator Rodriguez,
Rod Ricketts.
You have poisoned the well, Mr. President. You have poisoned the well. Senator Rodriguez just mentioned the issue of daily limits, for example. Daily limits is not something that will be regulated by the BOJ, but a bank will consider what it considers to be suspicious. If the engagement is with a DFNI, like a bank, like a car sales mart, they have a reporting requirement. So in terms, anything that looks suspicious to them, they will have to report because they are regulated already on another frame. So the aim is, while there isn't that specific $1 million cash limit, is not applicable to $1 million of Cbdc, meaning you can do a transaction that's more than $1 million. That is subject to the general POCA framework and the general recognition of suspicious transactions, within the DFNI perspectives, as well as, of course, any bank or any authorized payment services provider within their risk assessment framework. It also falls within their requirements to apply the AML and CFT criteria. Meaning the BOJ has already established that no one will be authorized if you are not someone who would be authorized as compliant within the AML and CFT framework. So while there will be, for example, microcredit not yet in that realm, so they would likely not immediately be authorized issuers of Cbdc. We're starting with the banks that are already recognized and others that are looking at it. Recognize that they will have to have that strong framework around it as well. So limits in terms of bank accounts will be the same framework that exists for cash bank accounts now. And in the same way, presumably, that there are easy access now frameworks to allow for simpler, customer-friendly, less complicated means of applying, then that will exist. And I want to also share in this regard that part of the benefit of this, and Senator Rodriguez Campbell, you spoke about, about the fairs. Campbell Rodriguez, Golden Campbell and Campbell Rodriguez. No. And I try to maintain a very clear line, you know, Senator. But you spoke about fairs and persons' fairs. Senator Gale, you spoke about fairs as well. And these are legitimate, and I do hope that the representatives of the Bank of Jamaica and the Ministry of Finance present today are hearing again the voices that express, and I'm quite sure they know, but hearing again for emphasis the need to ensure that the public education campaign which they're working on must be one which is not a banking information campaign, but one that speaks to the people who will be using it. I know they know how. We know that BOJ knows how. They have done it internationally to great acclaim across the world, using music, using our culture to communicate effectively. And I really am hopeful that they will apply that same innovative approach to the Jamdex and the CBDC product. It is important for persons to understand that carrying your money on your phone, if it's CBDC, backed by the BOJ, so not any Bitcoin or any sort of newfangled, new fad that is not managed, but serious Bank of Jamaica regulated digital currency developed to help you bank. That if you carry it on your phone, it doesn't mean that if somebody steals your phone, they steal your money. If they reach in your pocket or reach in your handbag or Senator Campbell, Senator Rodriguez seems to have different ways of carrying money, so I'm not going to go. However you carry your cash, if anyone takes it from you, it's gone. But if you carry the CBDC in your mobile wallet on your phone, and your phone is stolen or damaged, the money is not lost, because it actually is applied to an account that's held by and backed by the BOJ. So it's almost as if you have the bank account with you. Almost you always have immediate access to your bank account without having to go to the bank, which is the best of both worlds. So I think people need to understand that it's a safe way. If you lose your phone, you don't lose your money. If somebody tries to hack your phone, so you lose your phone, you report it to the bank that you've lost in the same way that you would protect your bank account if you thought that somebody took your debit card PIN or that you lost your debit card. It's the same way you would report to the bank that you want them to take special care before you start to use the account on your new phone. So very important that we have people understand this. People need to understand that it is limited to domestic transactions where we are now, where the product is. Maybe that will change, but the model now is one for domestic transactions, and this is again another layer of protection in the AML-CFT framework. So Senator Bunting raised earlier the issue of how much illicit money is coming in, but it can't be used. The CBDC model is not currently being used for international transactions. It's purely domestic. So it can only circulate what is already here. So other mechanisms need to deal with the problem. You raised the problem highlighted by the Minister of National Security in his sectoral. That has to be dealt with otherwise, but it's not a matter that currently compromises the CBDC. The point regarding security generally, though, is well made, and of course one which is being addressed by the very robust technology that's being used to deliver CBDC. I just wanted to raise the matter of inclusion, and Senator Floyd Morris, sir, can always rely on you to ensure that relevant issues are raised in terms of the community of persons living with disabilities and ensuring that the legislature and indeed our MDAs take good account of the concerns. So it's great to know that one of the benefits and one of the reasons that the new notes are so important is because they will be issued with features for persons who are visually impaired. The consultation was done with the Jamaica Society of the Blind. They have signed off on the mechanisms that are being used. The material that is being used is also one which is resistant to wear. It lasts a lifetime. So it's not like even your $5,000 feature would fade after time. But after a certain number of uses, it might become less immediately tangible. But in the new notes, the feature will not wear, and that is a very good assurance. I also join in this call. I think it is absolutely important that the banks pay more attention to the members of the community of persons with disabilities who need to be able to have reduced risk access to not only ATMs, but of course to whatever new facility is provided. I know some take it into consideration with their mobile apps to make sure that they are sound enabled, which has a risk factor unless you're wearing an earpiece like Senator Morris, like you are, because clearly if you are less savvy and you are using a voice-activated feature in the hearing of others, that is quite an exposure. So it's something that has to be thought about very seriously and very carefully. So I'm sure they're thinking about it. Different banks, as we all know, there's only one bank now that issues or that is capable of issuing the Cbdc. Other banks are on different ladders, I would say, or steps of the ladder towards delivery. Steps of the ladder. And we do hope that they are listening today and that they too will take good note. That when we speak about financial inclusion, it should not only be an economic denomination. It should be a social denomination. That means that we're trying to ensure that every Jamaican, whether with disabilities or not, has access to financial services. So notwithstanding my inability to give you any specific no, other than in respect of the notes themselves, which will come in the way which you are hopeful for, I will say that we are unified in here in our hope that the banks will ensure that their technology people are paying the right amount of attention to ensuring that there's accessibility features on Jamdex. Do not take him, Senator Morris. But just to say then, I think that we all recognize that this is the wave of the future. This is the way of now, and it is the way of the future. And it is a good thing that Jamaica and Jamaicans are not and will not be left behind. And in that context, I said the whole structure that applies to bank accounts now is what would apply. So they're not creating a new set of delimitations at this point. One is not to say whether banks will try to. There are some banks that offer greater facility for youth accounts, for example, and that's part of their customer pool, but it's not a regulatory mandate. So there is no restriction in terms of age limit for Cbdc. It is the same issue in respect of access, your ability to contract as a young person, meaning as someone who does not have the age of majority. All of those basic legal principles still apply. So they wouldn't need specific reference. And similarly, in respect of the Cybercrimes Act, certainly these matters would undoubtedly be relevant for them to be taken into consideration. And again, the good thing about the Cybercrimes Act is that the language is also always broadly framed to ensure that any crime conducted by use of technology is captured. So even if there is need for enhancement, one would ensure that any fraud or any such any illicit activity that is done in using Cbdc would be criminalized by cybercrimes already because it does that general provision. So, Mr. President, again, I ask for second reading of this bill as I close this very robust debate. Thank you.
Members would have heard the Minister and the Minister's question. Those in favour? Against? Madam Clerk?
A bill entitled An Act to Amend the Bank of Jamaica Act, read a second time.
The Senate will now resolve itself into a committee of the whole Senate to consider the bill clause by clause. With the agreement of both leaders, I will put clauses 1 to 5. Those in favour? Against? I put clauses 6 to 12. I'm sorry?
Yes, I was just going to ask if
So you want me to back up?
No, on 8, clause 8.
Okay.
If we had any clarification.
So let me just put clauses 6 and 7. Those in favor? Against? Okay, clause 8. Senator Bunting?
Yes, I just wanted to ask the leader if she had any clarification on the minting and the currency plates.
Right. Well, the terminology has apparently been developed as terms of art still used in the world of cryptocurrency and in the world of CBDC. So it doesn't require further, although it may seem a bit counterintuitive to you because you have a very visual association with the language, it is in fact the language that is still used internationally.
So there's no need for any definitional
it's accepted apparently, yes. But thank you for raising it because then the clarification is there for the public. Thank you.
Thank you. So following that, I put clauses 8 to 12. Those in favor? Against? The question is that I do report. Naturally. I put the title and enacting clause. Those in favor? Against? Thank you. The question is that I do report the bill as having passed committee stage without amendment. Those in favor? Against?
A bill entitled An Act to Amend the Bank of Jamaica Act, read a third time and passed.
Thank you very much, members. No, well, you see, we are so efficient. We are so efficient now that we have telepathically
virtual
just so that we have no surprises at any point, Mr. President, might I recommit the request for third reading of the bill?
Yes, the question is that the bill be read for a third time. Those in favor? Against? And the clerk read it for a third time. So there we go.
A bill entitled An Act to Amend the Bank of Jamaica Act, read a third time and passed.
Thank you very much, Madam Minister. Minister?
Yes, Mr. President, it is not intended to do any further business today. Therefore, if there is no further business, I would ask for the adjournment for a date to be fixed.
Thank you very much. But before we adjourn, I just wish to place a few things on the record of this Honourable Senate, this third day of June 2022. I quote, "I have had 6 highly active and productive years in multilateral diplomacy, focusing on both foreign policy and foreign trade policy, and I'm personally committed to the delivery of public service for development. I am fully dedicated to drive more purposeful and visionary action to promote and protect the principles and values of our Commonwealth family. I further commit to lead and manage transparently and efficiently the responsibilities entrusted to the Commonwealth Secretariat, working within an effective results-based management framework. It is in this context that I seek the favorable consideration and endorsement of the Commonwealth heads of state and government at their summit in Kigali in June 2022 for my appointment as Secretary General for the succeeding term in office. It is my hope that I will receive the confidence of member states in my competence dependability to lead the work ahead with dedication, inclusiveness, transparency, accountability, and integrity. Thus is the commitment statement of our leader, Minister of Foreign Affairs and Trade of Jamaica, Senator the Honourable Kamina Johnson-Smith. Jamaica is not unaccustomed to providing persons at the highest level of service internationally. Only recently, both Vareen Shepherd and our own Senator Morris have been elevated to positions where they take their capacity to an international level. And of course, we have many Jamaicans serving in various courts, including our own Patrick Robinson, who has served this country with dedication and high competence. The tongue of good report has already been heard in various quarters, locally and internationally, concerning the dedication, drive, and work ethic of our own Senator Kamina Johnson-Smith. Her commitment to service is well known. It is a commitment that was inspired by her father's commitment to this country. We know that we take nothing for granted, but today I place on record my support and best wishes for you, Senator Kamina Johnson-Smith.
Mr. President, I'm happy that you did that because I feel a little chill running through me when I'm talking about this. And, you know, Minister Johnson-Smith and I don't think if we were in high school together, we would have been friends. Because I am the loudmouth, talk out of turn, misbehave. And she's very much, though, like my best friend who is, things are to be done properly. Yes, she would keep me in line. And she would get on my nerves keeping me in line in high school. You know, but I have known Minister Johnson-Smith for a while when I served since I served at the Embassy of Jamaica in DC, where her father was ambassador at the time. And I know it must sometimes be hard because quite often when we talk about how good you are and how much we want, we always bring up Ambassador Johnson, and it may sometimes take away from just how awesome you are. But it's hard not to bring him up because he served this country so well. And I sent you a Facebook post that he had sent me a few years ago. It popped up in my memory. And just an amazing man who has produced an amazing daughter. And not to take away from your mother, she did contribute to your awesomeness, and she deserves as much praise as Ambassador Johnson does. But the ballots aren't counted yet, and as politicians, we know you don't count your chickens before they hatch. So I am going to just say to you, I wish you all the best. And it is significant that this will be happening in Rwanda, which everybody knows is dear to my heart, and also around my birthday, which is June 21st. So, yeah, that's another message right there I'm communicating to my colleagues here. But I just want you, Senator Johnson-Smith, to remember you are deserving. You have worked hard with unquestionable integrity and character. You deserve this, and Jamaica deserves this, because Jamaica has always promoted the idea that our people can be the best of the best anywhere, not just on our own shores, We're little, but we're talawa. We have big dreams, we behave big, we have big thoughts, we are actionable in whatever way. And while your victory will mean a loss to Jamaica, it's a gain for the wider Commonwealth. And I wish you, sorry, for the Senate. Yes, yes. I just want to say, wishing you all the best at Shogam in Rwanda on my birthday. Because we know next we see you in this chamber, it will be to say congratulations. So walk good.
Mr. President, I feel a little bit unprepared because I'm sensing from the presentations that it may be expected that this might be the last time that Senator Johnson Smith might be with us in this chamber. So I'm not quite sure whether we will have another opportunity or this is the final. If it is, I would only regret that Senator Lambert Brown is not here because I know he would want to personally add his sentiments. His sentiments on this occasion. And I would confess that in the relatively short time I've been in the Senate, we've had a few bumpy moments, but I would say in recent times, I think things have been proceeding on a much more cordial and collegial level. And I offer, on behalf of the opposition, best wishes, without getting ourselves drawn into any controversy. Best wishes. And if this is indeed the last time that you are with us as a member of this chamber, then I want to thank you for your contribution and look forward to seeing you in other capacities as we go along. So it's not goodbye, but you know, hasta la vista. Is that how you say it in Rwandan? But good luck and Godspeed.
If you wish, Senator Gale.
Pass the moment, President, because, you know, just this week I was having a conversation with someone and they said to me, this thing that Minister Johnson Smith is pursuing, I never know Senator Johnson Smith could mash hands. And I said, say what? And they said to me, Senator Johnson Smith is so prim and proper. And I said, yes, she is prim and proper, but she's also a giant of a woman. And I would have known Minister Johnson Smith for a very long time. We were in G2K together. And from then, I would have admired her approach and her intensity and the energy that she provides in doing almost anything that she seeks to accomplish. So this is no different in terms of a pursuance of seeking to go greater levels to serve. And Minister Johnson Smith, you are built for this. And we know that you will do extremely well. So today, what you have done over the past few years is for country. I am confident that you are going to move on to treat with the needs of Commonwealth and maybe further later on, even global. That is how I see you as a friend. And so, you know, I wouldn't tell you, Floyd, but I will tell you when I get it where I end up. But truth be told, you know, we wish you well. We know that in this new capacity, we're confident that you will go through and that you are going to raise the profile of Jamaica to the world. All wishing blessings. Thank you.
So, Senator Morris, he's coming up.
Mr. President, in your comments, you made mention of the fact that there are a number of Jamaicans who are serving at different levels internationally and on different international bodies, of which I am one of the members at the UN. And you know, when I was nominated for the position of the member at the UN committee, the government of Jamaica gave me support, and Minister Johnson Smith told me that she was going to make sure that they activated all the systems across the UN for support. And I want to say, Minister, as you aspire for this new frontier, that I want to wish you all the best and, you know, wish you Godspeed as you move to navigate into a different space. And that I join with the sentiments expressed by the leader of opposition business and really wish for you all the best and hope that that there will be a positive result for you, but at the end of the day, you will be here with us at some point in time for some form of discussion to be had in the Senate. And as Senator Bunting said, you know, that all the members would be here to express their good wishes for you. And we wish you, on a serious note, all the best. May it please you, Mr. President.
Sorry, Minister. Senator.
Mr. President, thank you. I too had to take the opportunity to just offer to Senator Kamina Johnson-Smith my own best wishes and to make some comments by way of reminder, perhaps not so much for the members of this Senate, but for those who do not and have not had the opportunity to work in close proximity with her. The role of Secretary General of the Commonwealth is a significant one, and one that requires a person of steady mind, a person who is a skilled negotiator, a person who has equally good skills at mediation, at resolving disputes, and perhaps in all of that, Mr. President, a person who is inclusive and who allows views to contend. Mr. President, Senator Kamina Johnson-Smith is blessed to be overflowing with those skill sets. And I have no doubt that she is uniquely positioned to deliver those kinds of skills at a very high level at the Commonwealth Secretariat. And so I too join the members of the Senate in extending my best wishes to her. I know that the occasion coming down the road is more likely than not to end in a favorable result. And I wish her all the best. My prayers go with her. Whenever one leaves home, my prayers go with you. Don't get too homesick. We'll send you some care packages. But what Jamaica is delivering to the Commonwealth, Mr. President, must be known is of the highest quality, the highest caliber, and the highest integrity. May it please you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Minister?
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. President, and thank you very much, colleagues, as well. I think that I am hopeful. This is how I will state it. I am hopeful that today is not my last day here. Although, admittedly, I do travel next week. But I think that if I do have a successful result, and I must say that I'm deeply encouraged by the support that I have received, both the public expressions by countries across the Commonwealth, as well as the many more which have been expressed privately, as I imagine that persons who are close to these kinds of processes recognize that it is in fact quite unusual for countries to publicly endorse candidates. And it has been noted that this has been just a demonstration of the energy that exists around the candidacy, and indeed the positive reception that my policy statements, that my engagements with different countries at the foreign ministry, ambassadorial, and head level has generated. I have to also say that from a Jamaican perspective, I am out jogging in the morning and people stop me and say, it's going well, and you have my vote, Minister. I really have to say, thank you, sir, thank you, ma'am. In my head, I'm saying, Lord, I wish they had a vote. Because if it was Jamaica to vote for me, I win already. I say it every time. If it was Jamaicans voting for me, and I win already. That love that I have experienced, and together with the expressions of persons who say that they're really not so happy about it because they think I'm going to win and they don't want me to leave because they value the role that I play, is indeed a compliment to the work that I and my team do here in the Senate, and I and my team at the ministry do at Port Royal Street, and of course before at Dominica Drive. Again, I say that I've been running a positive campaign, a dignified campaign, and I've been very dedicated and committed to keeping it that way. I think there have only been one or two persons that have sought to distract with unfortunate incidents that they try to take globally and to expand on and to mischaracterize what I think my colleagues here have sought to capture. So I thank you for that, because it is in fact a boon to Jamaica if it is that we lead the Secretariat. We have operated at every different level, but we have not led. And there is absolutely no reason why a Jamaican should not be in that role. So I am committed in my campaign to proposing and to supporting the implementation of SDGs in across developing countries, members of the Commonwealth, increasing advocacy on climate change and for climate financing, innovative approaches, and moving the needle on those important elements, advancing gender and youth empowerment, harnessing the youth dividend of the Commonwealth, and indeed advancing good governance and good offices role of the Secretariat its technical capacity, which is known across the Commonwealth, but less so now, because it has become less connected to people. And perhaps due to reductions in funding, due to lack of confidence, that there has been a fall-off in some of its ability to deliver. And it is believed by many of the countries with whom I've engaged that Jamaica's leadership in my person could return that level of support. And so, again, I'm grateful for all that has been expressed. I'm grateful for the legacy of both my parents, because, again, as we always speak about Daddy, and I welcome every reference and every memory. And up to last week, somebody sent me a copy of a letter that someone wrote him in 80-something, commending him on his teaching, in his approach to teaching at the college where he worked, a teacher's college, as a matter of fact, and just the way lives were touched. But my mom is also absolutely has one of the strongest work ethics I've ever known. So between the two of them, I give thanks for what they have taught me. And if there is any little piece of them, or any little piece of me that reflects on them, it is something I give thanks for. So, always service, always Jamaica, and Jamaica to the world. Thank you, Mr. President.
On that note, the question is that the Senate be adjourned for a date to be fixed. All in favor? Against?
how do you get your child to eat healthily? Nutritionist Nicole France says it's all about modeling.